On today's show, we're going to be talking about 10 ways funeral homes and cremation providers can save money with their Google AdWords campaign and get more clicks in the process.
Welcome to Strategy Talks by Funeral Results Marketing, where funeral professionals discover the latest marketing strategies that get results. Now join Robin Heppel and Brian Young as they share their insights and experiences to help you and your firm during these ever-changing times in the funeral profession.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Strategy Talks by Funeral Results Marketing. And before we get into today's topic, I wanted to let you know that at the end of this show, if you stick around, you can get your own copy of the 10-point checklist for funeral homes using Google AdWords. And over the years, we've seen a lot of funeral homes out there spend a lot of money on AdWords. And in too many cases, in looking back over the numbers, we see a lot of wasted money on AdWords. In fact, this has been one of the most common questions to us lately is how do we get more out of our AdWords program? How do we avoid spending so much? And today, our own specialist here, Robin Heppel, who you guys know for many years has been teaching funeral homes and cremation businesses how to save money and get more with their marketing, is going to be talking about that with us. So Rob, where do you want to start today? Where should a funeral home or a cremation provider start the whole thinking process, the preparation process? What should they do if they're getting into having an online Google AdWords campaign?
Well, one of the key things is, when you get started and how you get set up. And, one thing you don't want to do is, Google will just, you put in a couple keywords and then they'll try to create the campaigns and ad groups for you. So and then, on the other hand, if a funeral home or cremation providers is creating it themselves, they may end up lumping everything. So number one is we want to make sure that we separate our keywords into specific ad groups. And the four main ad groups that I focus on are funeral homes, funeral costs, cremation services, and cremation costs. Now, when we're talking funeral homes, that would include funeral homes, funeral services, mortuaries, funeral parlors. When people are looking for a category of business, and also too, I always like to focus on the plural funeral homes versus funeral home singular. When we kind of dig into it, funeral home singular usually is preceded with the distinctive name of the funeral home. So from searching for funeral homes in Victoria, BC, they may search for Heppel Funeral Home singular Victoria, BC. So we still bid on the singular one, but we'd be excluding our name and our competitor's name, and we'll get into that in one of the other tips. Then what we want to do though is then separate and have a different group and a different ad group for buying intent words. So when they're using like costs or prices, the average cost, things like that, where they're being a bit more specific. And the term that Google uses here is ad group. So when we're looking at our hierarchy, we have our campaigns. And then inside our campaign, we have our different ad groups. So we group our keywords into these ad groups because we want to show a specific ad for those keywords. So if someone's searching for funeral costs, we want that ad to be more focused on funeral costs, and then we want to drive them to a page about funeral costs. And then we have cremation services. So that would be similar to the funeral homes example, and then cremation costs. And I also like to put these into two different campaigns. So we have our funeral campaign with the ad group funeral homes and the ad group funeral costs. And then our cremation campaign would have cremation services and cremation costs. So that's the reason why we want this to happen too is our ads are going to be more relevant. If we can kind of what they've said for 100 years, these old time marketers, you want to, I think it was Robert Collier, you want to enter the conversation going on in their mind. So if they're typing in cremation costs and you're a funeral home that provides cremation services, if you had a generic ad that triggered that and talked about your funeral home services and maybe cremation, and then that ad dropped them on the homepage, that is not what Google calls keeping the scent. You want congruency in your ad. So if they're searching for cremation costs, it's best to have an ad that talks about cremation costs, and then it's best to have a landing page that talks about cremation costs. That's keeping the scent. That's very congruent versus they search for cremation costs and all of a sudden they end up on the homepage of the funeral home website, and then they have to kind of start their search again from the homepage. So now the reason why this will save you money is that for your different ad groups, your click-through rate is going to go up because the ads are more tailored to the searches. So your ads are going to be more attractive, and Google rewards this. So they will, if you have a higher click-through rate and if you have a better quality score, meaning the landing page that you have associated to the keywords is really relevant, they're going to give you a higher quality score. So you might be paying less per click than your competitor, and even though your ad's placed higher. So this is both a money saving tip as well as improving the ad rank for your for your ads and your campaigns. So that's it in a nutshell. Make sure you separate your keywords into at least these 4 sets of ad groups, and we'll a little bit later we'll talk about a couple specialty campaigns too. But we'll wrap that one up for now, Brian.
So that's some pretty intensive material right there, Rob, for sure. And hopefully our listeners have their notebooks out. Don't want to scare them away, but this is good stuff. So after that kind of basic nugget or foundation, what's the next piece we need to think about? I know you talked about negative keywords. How does that play into this overall greater Google AdWords strategy and saving money?
Sure. Well, one of the things is you do not want your ads to show up for certain searches. Like it's because for 2 reasons. One, you don't want your ad clicked when people don't really have the intent of, maybe you have a really curious, a well-written ad, but from what people have typed in, they're not going to be a client. So you don't want them to click on your ad. You don't, and you don't even want your ad to show up, because if your ad's showing up for a irrelevant search, and they don't click on it, then your click-through rate is going to go down, and that's going to hurt your ad rank and quality score. So, as an example, if you didn't have any negative keywords and you were bidding on the term funeral home, Chicago, Illinois, and that was your, that's going to be a pretty expensive ad. But the person searched for funeral home obituaries, Chicago, Illinois. So that's going to trigger your ad to appear, but they're just looking for an obituary. So you'd want to make sure that a word like obituary and all of its derivatives are negative keywords. And we have a complete list of keywords that we add in. You can add them in at the campaign level or just overall as well. So we've got things like accidents, like bouquets or anything to do with flowers, cards. You want to include, especially for your cremation campaigns, you want to include like cats, dogs, horses, pets, obituaries, as I mentioned, death notices, employees, employer, careers. These you don't want. You want to trigger your negative keyword list to prevent your ad from showing. If people are looking for these, this is fine if they come across you, but these aren't going to be making you direct money, unless for some reason you're in a really big market and lots of people are searching for jobs. you might then have a specific campaign about careers. But we'd also include memorial folders, also like lawsuits, different things like that you don't want someone who's like doing research for something other than choosing a funeral home to do business with. So we have a complete list that we're actually going to attach the keyword list to the checklist that you'll get at the end. So, but I just want to really stress the importance of having negative keywords, and which will probably lead us into our next one, Brian.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think I've seen that negative keyword issue, and this next piece we want to have you explain to us be two of the biggest problems. So what about when somebody wants to put their brand name in keywords? A lot of times I'm on Google and I'm searching for electronics and I'll see something like Blockbuster or Target or Macy's. Is that a good idea for the funeral home industry where it's a lot smaller situation? You don't have thousands and thousands of shoppers. What about using your brand name in the keywords?
Sure. Well, I think it's important to do this for a couple of reasons. So the strategy that I recommend is creating a new campaign for your brand. So we don't want someone searching for Heppel Funeral Home, Victoria, BC to trigger that your main funeral homes, Victoria, BC ad, because if someone's searching for your distinctive name, they're looking at that for a reason. So, and if we didn't this is a two-step process. We create our brand campaign, but then in every other campaign, we add our surname or our brand names as negative keywords in all those other campaigns. And then we want, if anyone's searching for Heppel Funeral Home, Heppel Cremation Services, Heppel Mortuary, whatever it could be, we want our brand campaign to be triggered and not the funeral homes campaign to be triggered. And so this is going to do a couple things. One, since your website is going to be all about your name, you're going to have probably a 10 out of 10 quality score. So and we see that when we do this, someone who's paying $5 a click for funeral homes in Cleveland, Ohio, if someone's searching for their funeral home in the funeral home name in Cleveland, Ohio, that's in a separate campaign, they might go from paying $5 for that generic search to down to $1 or less, even like 50 cents, because first of all, you're able to, people are looking, that's who they're looking for anyway. So your competitors can search on your name or bid on your name. But if someone's looking for the name of your funeral home and they see a competitor ad, they're going to really need to see a reason why they would want to click it. Plus, it's going to be a really low quality score because it's not going to get clicked a lot. Now, what's important though, we want to be really strategic here, because if someone's searching for the name of your funeral home, we'd rather them just search on or click on your Google My Business page that's probably going to pop up, or your top organic listing. So my expert tip here is kind of make it a dull ad. You don't want the ad to be super compelling. You just want it to be almost like a little bit of a business card, so that it's there. If you didn't have it there, your competitors could be in that top spot, and again, casting a little bit of doubt. So we have it, and we want to make sure that we don't include any ad extensions, which we'll talk about in one of the other points. So you want your ad to show up, but you want it to be plain. You don't want it to be super compelling, because if they're searching for your name, they're probably just searching, maybe they're searching for your phone number or the obituaries or the directions to the funeral home. So we'd rather not pay the 50 cents to $1, but we'd much rather not pay $5 for not going through this process of having a set of brand campaigns with then negative keywords for your brand in every other campaign.
Okay. So now you got me curious. The competitor in me is thinking, well, you just mentioned maybe a competitor competing for your name. What do you think about putting competitors' names in my keywords? What if I want to show up and somebody searches for ABC Funeral Home and I want them to find Heppel Funeral Home? What do you think about that, and how should I do it?
Well, sure. So it's kind of the exact same strategy, but just kind of reversed. If someone's searching for a competitor's name, we don't want to be, and we're going to have, we're going to have some great ads. So we don't want someone to click our ad out of curiosity when it's in our main funeral homes campaign. So we take our competitors, we create a competitor campaign. We then take all our competitors' names and their similarities or derivatives and add those as negative keywords in every other campaign. And then in our specific campaign for competitors, that's where we bid on their names. And then in that campaign, we want to have a different set of ads where you're really casting some doubt. Now you're going to have, you're probably not going to have high click-throughs here. This is more of a defensive measure of not spending money, but you can also have a little bit of chance, especially maybe if someone's a lot more expensive. You could have an ad that says, if you're searching, not all funeral homes in Seattle charge the same. Click here for a cost comparison on funerals, or something like that. That would maybe cast a bit of doubt. Now, you're not going to get a lot of business out of it. You might get something, but again, it's more, we're protecting your main campaign, because if someone's searching for your competitors' keywords, they're probably not going to click on your ad. So that means your click-through rate's going to go down. So I've been saying the same number of things similar, like we're protecting our click-through rate. We are wanting to keep our ad rank and our quality score high. So again, this is a way to protect our click-through rate, and the very side benefit of maybe trying to change someone's mind. It's probably not going to happen, but it's much better to have these off to the side in their own little campaign than eroding the click-through rate of your main campaign.
Okay, so we've got a couple other points we're going to move through here, but one thing I wanted to ask you real quick before I move on, you're describing a scenario there where we're kind of playing defensive, we're protecting our space. I know we've talked about this movement from computers and laptops to more and more families using smartphones, and a lot of times now when people on a smartphone, you can only see 2 or 3 listings. So would you say that due to this smartphone era that the AdWords part of the game is even more important now, or is about the same as it was before? Because I'm just looking at the screen, I can't see that many results.
Oh yeah, so it is more important. It is more important now than it has been in the past. With I think in almost every market that we have clients in, the overall traffic to their websites is cracked that 50% mobile. So in our bid strategy, if again, I would want to bid high on your funeral homes and cremation services, cremation costs, funeral costs. You want to be in the top 2 spots on mobile, so you can actually go in and adjust your bid so that maybe for some reason you have a couple competitors in your market that really spend a lot of money in AdWords, and they're always in the top 2 spots, and maybe you're in the 3rd spot because you don't want to spend a lot more. But it's really important to maybe then do a bid adjustment to get your ad in the top 1 or 2 for the mobile. So you can do what they call a mobile bid adjustment to move your ad up. Again, I wouldn't worry about that for the competitors search. And maybe even just for your competitor campaign, don't even like lower your bids on mobile, because if someone's searching from the phone for your competitor, you're probably not going to change their mind from a phone. So you may just not want your ads to show at all. But if they're searching for your name, then you want, they're probably going to see your organic listing pretty quickly, even if your ad's not showing. Your ad's probably going to show anyway, because you're going to have such a high quality score, even though you're bidding a lot less. So, but yeah, hopefully, Brian, that answers your question of, a slightly little, and maybe that's a topic for another podcast where we really get into mobile bidding and, kind of the differences there, because you do want to cater to the, I just always pictured the person sitting at the side of the bed, for at hospice when their loved one's dying and they're starting to do their research right there. And how do you appear in that circumstance?
Yeah, that probably would be. That's an interesting thought. That's a good topic for the future. I look forward to that. So I've got another question for you here that relates to our next point. We've had questions from some of our clients and people out there who say, there's all these words now below the Google ad. And, what are all those words? What are those called? And how do I get all those words under my ad so I can take up more space and can say more in that space that my ad is given? What are those called, and what can you tell us about those?
Sure, Brian. Yeah, so they're called ad extensions. And for ad extensions, what Google's doing is they're saying, hey, for you people who are keen and want to use all the additional services that we offer, you can make your ads even more relevant. So they've had this for a while now. They've had some ad extensions like Sitelinks. That's where you might see three or four separate link, like words or phrases linked kind of below the ad. And then like you might see a phone number. So that's the phone extension, or the call extension. And then you might see the location with the little balloon. That's the location extension. But they keep on adding these. So there's another one called the Callout. And that's just more of it's not clickable, but it's something that you can just add a couple things, such as satisfaction guarantee, no hidden fee guarantee, 24-hour service. And the more that you use of these, Google appreciates that. And one of the factors in their formula of ad rank is using how much ad format are you using. So if you don't do this, then Google's going to say, hey, these guys aren't really that serious. But if you activate these now, just because you have all your ad extensions activated doesn't mean that they're going to show. They're going to show for the top spots. You're going to see a lot of them, but not all of them. But once you get into kind of the third spot, fourth spot, you don't see as many ad extensions as you would in spot number 1 and 2. There's also ones that are called the structured snippet, which you can take a topic. So you could say like amenities, reception center, funeral chapel, audio and video displays, convenient parking. So these are things that are just giving you, you can say a little bit more about your facility or about your operation. And then one of the newest ones is the price extension. So this is really good, especially for cremation operators or low-cost cremation operators, where you can actually have your simple cremation, your celebration of, maybe you've got your cremation only, simple cremation, and then signature cremation prices. And they keep making your ad bigger and bigger, up to 9 lines of text, where before it used to just be 3 or 4. And if your competitors, when you do a search, if you're seeing that their ads are just taking up 3 or 4 lines, they're not very serious about this. But if you see an ad that's 9 lines tall, then hey, these guys are super active in their management of their Google AdWords. So not only does it make your ad more appealing, it actually pushes everyone else down further down below you because it's giving you way more real estate, and you can address different things that people might be thinking of. So, if they're looking for cremation offerings or options or prices, or comparison, you can have different links to those different items. Again, as long as it's in the same frame of search that they're looking for. So that's and one last extension is the review extension. So if you have reviews, you can have actually a review show up in your ad as well. But again, these really only get displayed for the people who are in the first position and the second position. But putting all these ad extensions into play are going to help you move up that in ad rank, so that you're going to be, as long as you're bidding well and as long as everything else is done well, you're going to be in those top 1 or 2 spots.
So that's really getting into the finer skills of operating an AdWords campaign, I think, but that makes sense what you explained there. I know there's a couple other pieces that are important to the successful function of an AdWords campaign. You mentioned to me something about landing pages. How do landing pages figure into an AdWords campaign? And for those who don't know, maybe just real quick, could you refresh our memories on what a landing page actually is?
Sure. Yeah, and we did mention this kind of in the first tip. But a landing page is the page that the visitor or the searcher lands on after they click your ad. So we want that landing page to be relevant to the search. And again, we want that to be a congruent process, and again, keeping the scent, as Google says. So if they're searching for cremation costs, you want to show an ad that talks about cremation costs, and then you want them to land on a page that talks about cremation costs. That is congruent, and also Google will give you a higher quality score because that landing page is associated with the search. If they search for cremation costs and you put them onto your homepage of the funeral home where they talk about funerals and cremation and directions and obits and all that stuff, cremation gets really watered down there, and you probably don't have cremation costs on your homepage. It's not going to have the same quality score. It's not going to give, and what is most important to Google, it's not going to give their person the best user experience. So, because they'd have to then start searching from your homepage and find, cremation, and then find costs if they happen to have that. So, that's it in kind of in a nutshell. We've kind of talked about it already, but that's another way to lower your cost because if you have a higher quality score, you're going to have an overall higher ad rank, and you could be bidding less than the next person and still have the top spot.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. I guess I'll kind of transition there. I know we've had a lot of people come to us looking for help, and I've heard over the years they'll work with a company or they'll try it themselves, and they'll quote unquote set it and forget it when it comes to their Google AdWords or the company they're working with. Well, is that a safe procedure, or is there the things you need to continually do? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, and I think this is what we're going to be talking about here is what we call keyword pruning, and this is probably there's all this other stuff that is kind of out there that you can see, these things that we've talked about quality score and ad extensions and that, but keyword pruning is really important, but it's tedious work. And I think, this is kind of, the one thing that, we do this all the time. We're in there, depending on the type of package you have every week or every other week, going through and looking at the actual searches that people are making to trigger your ads. And if we see something, because there's just going to be weird anomalies, and we don't want your ad showing for irrelevant searches. So as an example, even right here in Victoria, our client, McCall Gardens Funeral and Cremation Services, when early on when we started their campaign, we started seeing that people, and because you're not bidding on these keywords, so you wouldn't know unless you dig into the actual search terms, people were bidding on McCalls and recipes and McCalls and dress patterns. And some people might know that there's a ladies magazine called McCall's. And so they have like a homemaker's magazine, and has all this information about that stuff, right? Which, so their ad was getting triggered for these things. And this was even before we had separated their name into their brand account. So what we did though is we go, hey, we don't want these ads showing up. So anything that would search, if someone was searching for McCall's and apple pie recipe, the ad wouldn't show at all. We don't even want it to show up, because if it did and they didn't click on it, we're going to get it's going to hurt your click-through rate. And if they did click on it for some reason, it's going to cost you a click. So it's really important, but again, it's tedious, and usually the funeral director isn't going to, go in and do this on a regular basis. And it saves the funeral home money, because we're in there, we're getting rid of like irrelevant clicks, and we're also increasing the click-through rate of not having the ad show up for irrelevant searches.
Okay. Yeah, that probably explains why so many of our clients, or people who are clients today, or people who've talked to, said that their previous AdWords provider just set it and forget it, as far as they could tell, because it is so tedious. Let's transition a little bit. Along that line of how do we continually improve our Google AdWords campaigns so we're getting better return on investment, better ROI. What kinds of things can we do to improve the quality score? I've heard you talk about that. You've talked about keywords. What should we watch for? What can we do to improve the quality score of our keywords and our ad campaign?
Yeah, well, what we're now that we've got everything set up, there's going to be keywords that are better, that are probably going to be the more obvious ones, and like funeral homes in, or funeral homes, and then your city and state or province. So sometimes sometimes the word in is in there, or sometimes it's not, but those are the kind of the real money searches. And you want to look at those and make sure that your quality score is at least a 6 or higher for those. And not just for funeral homes, but you want then, your next set would be funeral cost, funeral prices, and see what your quality score is there. And again, if it drops, if it's 5 or below, or even 6, you may want to either see what landing page it's going to, and if it's going to your homepage or going just about your services, it might be worthwhile to create a new landing page that talks more specifically about that. So you're going to see which searches are the most popular, and then really hone those to improve that quality score, which is going to then improve your ad rank, which is going to actually lower your cost per bid, and at the same time allow you to have your ad placed as high as possible. So again, this is just something on more of a maintenance ongoing. You want to be looking at those main ones, but because you might be, and the one thing that we're not talking about is, the human that's actually going there. And if they get, they searched on cremation costs and they land on the funeral home homepage, they're going to be frustrated. It's just like, when you're phoning customer service anywhere and you kind of start going down the path, and then you get routed back to the head operator. Okay, let me, sorry, you're at switchboard again. You got to kind of go through. So putting them on your homepage is like putting people back at the switchboard. So they're not going to have as great an experience either. So the human element, they're going to be frustrated.
That makes sense. Another question I had is, I've heard a couple of things that I think relate to our next point. Some people say, hey, well, I guess if you don't like the guy who's competing with you in town, you can go on there and click on his word, run up his bill. But also, what if they're searching, looking at their own ads all the time? Do either of those behaviors hurt or help you, or hurt or help your competitor?
Well, yeah. So it's funny because we'll get this often. Like, the first thing we do is we tell people, look, don't click on your ad, and I don't know, maybe things have been slow at the funeral home and they're sitting in front of the computer and they've got Google open and they're starting to, do different keyword searches. And, so one thing that'll happen is over time, if people keep searching and they don't click on your ad, like if they're searching and they're not going to click on their own ad, maybe they're clicking on their other, their competitor's ad, or maybe they're just checking out their organic listing or their local Google My Business listing. Eventually your ad may not show because Google is like constantly going, hey, well, they just keep ignoring this ad, from this computer, or from this IP address, and may not show it. So we've had calls in the past of like, hey, our ads aren't showing. And it's because Google, I said, like, are you logged into Google, or are you, clear your cache or go into like incognito, or, open up a private tab or window to do the search, just to make sure you don't have any of that history affecting the ads that show. But more importantly, it's best to just use the Google AdWords preview tool. So this is a utility that Google offers that you can go to and you can perform a search. The nice thing about this is you can actually put the city in of where you want the search to be, as if where the search is being generated from. So if you're in a big area, you may want to try a couple of different communities of how does your ad show up in those different communities. And we use this all the time because we're not in the same town as our clients, so we don't see how the ads show up. Because if we search from here for someone else halfway across the country, the ads are probably going to show up differently anyway. So using the preview tool shows you exactly how the ads are showing up for that search from that city, and it doesn't trigger an impression, meaning it's not showing your ad and then having your it's not showing your ad and then kind of giving you a penalty of lowering your click-through rate because the ad didn't get clicked on. It's static. When you use this tool, you can't click on the ads. It's just showing you basically a snapshot of that page. And you can use this for organic, to check out your organic listings as well, because it gives you the pure search without any history or other preferences that may be set from your personal computer. Then also, when you're talking about your competitor's ad, as you mentioned, Brian, sure, if you want to check out your competitor's ad once in a while, that's fine. Like maybe click on it once. I'm not saying that you should do it all the time. If you do it all the time, sure, you're costing them some money, but you're also improving their click-through rate. So again, if you want to do it once and just to see the path of what they're doing, I guess that's okay. But don't do it repeatedly, because if you do that repeatedly, sure, it's costing them a little bit of money, but it's also improving their click-through rate at the exact same time you're hurting your click-through rate. So I just recommend going to the Google Ad Preview tool and checking to see how your ads are showing up from there. And it's just simple. Just go to Google and type in Google AdWords Preview tool, and it'll take you right there.
Yeah, it'd be kind of funny to think of trying to knock your competitor down a notch or two when actually you're doing just the reverse and helping their ad up. I think you explained that on the Funeral Results Marketing website in some detail. If people want to go there and look at the AdWords and see the explanation of how the scoring and the ad ranking works with relation to costs, and how as your score goes up, your costs actually go down. So I have one more question for you. I've seen a lot over the years. Suddenly an ad will start appearing in a market from somebody who's 50, 100, maybe 500 miles away. I've even seen for a while there was a I think it was Affordable Cremations of New York, and I would see that ad all over the country for all kinds of searches. What happens if you see somebody in your area and there's no way that they're trying to compete with you? It's not like they're Neptune or some national company. Is there anything, do we just let that go, or should we be concerned about that, or how might that impact us, and what should we do?
Sure. Well, I wouldn't say let it go. And you kind of have to go a little old school here. The best thing is just to pick up the phone, because a couple things are happening here, and I think we have a little bit of a theme of today's presentation. But when someone is, and there's actually the issue here with Neptune, in Victoria, BC, as a crow flies, we're not that far away from Seattle. And there's a Neptune office there, and one of the reasons, one of the issues that why this is happening, Brian, is that Google kind of changes how, like when you get into setting up the campaign, it's not super black and white. Like you could say, I only want to market to this city or this radius, and that's it. They'll also say, well, what if someone is like outside of this area, kind of searching for this area? So you kind of, there's these kind of gray settings that you can set up. And when we get back to this example here with Neptune from Seattle, however they have their settings set up, whether it's a radius or something, what they haven't done is they haven't excluded Victoria, BC. Again, as a crow flies, we're probably we are quite close to them, but there's a large body of water between, there's the Strait of Juan de Fuca between Washington State and Vancouver Island, and then and then all the mileage down to Seattle. So people aren't going to be coming across a big body of water like that into another country and perform a service. And so the problem is that for my clients here, it's driving their bid cost up because we got another player in the game, and it is hurting Neptune's click-through rate because people are probably, it's hurting either, people are clicking on the ad because they, maybe the ad was enticing enough to click on it, and then they go, oh, well, they're in Seattle, we're not going to do business with them, we're here in Victoria. Or they don't click on the ad, and it then registers a decrease in their click-through rate. So the best thing to do, and that's why I said go to old school, pick up the phone, talk to them nicely, and just say, hey, look, I know we're both in the funeral profession. We're here in a different area. We're either, and it depends on where you are. Maybe you're in a different state and the rules are a lot different. Maybe you're across a river and, there isn't a bridge on either side for 10 miles or so. But for some reason, because of their settings, the ads are showing up, where they really can't serve them. Now you might get someone who's being a jerk and just says, hey, well, we're going to take a call wherever we can get it. And I guess they don't really care about their, about their account. But if they do, you'd just say, hey, look, can you exclude? So I'll just pretend this is Brian, you'll be the Neptune guy and in Seattle, and I'll be McCall's funeral home here. So I'll phone up and I'll say, hey Brian, I understand that you're the manager there of Neptune and you look after the marketing. I didn't know if you knew, this is Rob Heppel from McCall Gardens in Victoria, BC. I'm not sure you're aware of this or not, but your ad is actually appearing here in the Victoria market in Google. And now you might say, oh, well, I didn't know that, or, and I said, so it's actually hurting both of us because, you're driving our cost of our bids up, and, it's actually hurting you because your click-through rate's going to go down because of all the searches here. People aren't going to click on your ad because you're in Seattle, or they're going to click on your ad and then they're probably not going to do business with you because you're 100 miles away in a different country. And so hopefully the response that you get from the other person is, hey, thanks a lot for that. I'll let our guys know to exclude your area. And, and maybe that you could say, hey, if this is happening here, maybe they're doing it in some other area as well. But, that's going to, for your local business, you're going to have one less competitor. So the bids aren't going to be as high and there's going to be less confusion in the market. So go a little old school, pick up the phone and, try to work it out. If they're smart marketers, they'll thank you for it. If they're being jerks, they're probably just going to say whatever. And it's not hurting your business other than, driving your bid up a bit. So it is costing you, I guess, a little bit of money. And, that's the whole point of this. Our topic today is 10 money-saving tips for your funeral home or cremation business.
Well, that is a lot to think about. In fact, I think it'd be fair to say if you were going to a community college, you'd pay a fair amount of money to learn all that. So hopefully you all appreciate that. I know I do. And I think you had said there at the beginning that they can get their own copy of a 10-point checklist regarding these tips to help them. And what do they need to do to get that, Rob?
Yeah, just below the the podcast episode here, or go to funeralresults.com/1111 or /11 and just click on the button. You can download. It's just 2 pages back, front and back, with each one of these with a little bit of a description here, so that you're reminded of what we were talking about. And you can just kind of circle yes or no, or give it to your marketers who are looking after your campaign. And if you think, hey, can we? It just sounds like way more about it than us. We'd be more than happy to manage your account for you. Again, for these things that we're talking about, we implement these, so they're probably going to save you the cost of our monthly management fee anyway, because we're on top of it. This is what we do, and you've got better things to do. You're in your community. Making those connections, building rapport, serving families, and let us focus on this and actually save you money. So and we do have a 6-month money back guarantee on our AdWords program, where you can give us a try, and after 6 months, if you don't like the results that you get, we will give you back your any setup fee or any and management fee over the course of that 6 months. We can't refund the clicks from Google because you have gotten that business to your website, but everything that was billed to us, we will refund that. So we're pretty confident that we can help most funeral homes, especially in competing markets. So you can get more information at funeralresultsmarketing.com/AdWords on the programs that we offer.
And I just wanted to throw in there, Rob, after over 10 years in the industry, I've never seen anybody else who offers a money-back guarantee, even partially, let alone 100%. So I think that shows your confidence, and anybody who gets in there and digs around certainly sees how tedious it is. But with that, just real quick before we end the show today, we wanted to remind everyone this topic and more detail about it will get talked about at our upcoming Cremation Conference in September down in St. Petersburg, Florida. And if you want to know more about that, please go to cremationconference.com and you can get more details. But especially if you are a cremation operator or you want to compete more for cremation calls with the service, dominating on search engines, even in the paid area, is very important. So we'll be talking more about that. And as usual, we'd like to finish by asking you, what's your burning question about online marketing for your funeral home? If you will leave it here, we will try to answer it on an upcoming episode. And if you like what you're hearing, please do leave a comment on the blog or give it a rating on iTunes or Google Play.
And thanks for spending time with us today. It is our goal for you to serve more families and provide them more meaningful services. And make sure you check back soon for another episode of Strategy Talks by Funeral Results Marketing. Until the next episode, this has been Brian Young and Robin Heppel.
This has been another episode of Strategy Talks with Robin Heppel and Brian Young. To ask a question or leave a comment, visit funeralresultsmarketing.com/talks. To make sure that you never miss an episode, you can subscribe to this podcast for free on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.